on the webinar here. What is it, July 8th, Wednesday morning. I'm Mike. I'm with Oakville Bluegrass, Cooperative, and we're talking about, this is our last, I think, of 5 discussions in our growing cover series this summer, talking about perennial cover, permanent cover, and how to establish it, who to get seed from, how to select seed, what to expect when you're doing that versus, if you're doing the annual soil builder mix of legumes and brassicas and things like that in your orchard or vineyard. So we're talking about things that are different and hopefully conveying information that helps orchard and vineyard producers really up and down the West Coast move into a new way of doing soil cover and cover crops. And ideally, it also establishes the ability to put more carbon, put more microbes in the soil, keep the microbes healthy, and reduce costs over time. So in this conversation, we've got Justin Fruechte from Millborn Seeds. And if you've ever seen Millborn's catalog of seeds available, it's kind of mind-bending. It's like when you go into a nice restaurant and you look at their wine list and they've got like 737 different wines from all over the world. Like looking at it and you can't pronounce half the names. When you look at Millborn seed list of what they have, it's a phenomenal resource of native seeds across just about every category you can imagine. So I'm really stoked to have Millborn here and have Jason represent what they've got going on, what their superpowers are. And I'm also interested in hearing about the resource. They just recently purchased another seed supplier up in Washington State, which since our AMP grant covers Washington State, we may actually have really even more capacity to support some growers on the West Coast through Millborn's network and whatnot. So Justin, take it away. Tell us a little bit about what you do and then just Millborn at large. We're out here on the West Coast. Somebody's really, if they're a native seed, junkie, then they know about you, or if they've been listening to Food Plot, hunting podcast to talk about food plots for deer, they probably know about you. But in the ag space on the West Coast, this might be a lot of new information. So tell us about Millborn and what you guys are doing.
Sure. Perfect. I will do that. I'll just go ahead and start to.
Got a little presentation.
I'll share a few slides here that kind of gives you a glimpse of who we are and everything that we do here.
Right on.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to go there. Okay. So, thank you for this invitation. We're excited to be a part of this and try to help Oakville Bluegrass Co-op too. So, just to give you a snapshot of who we are located in Brookings, South Dakota. That's our main headquarters. That's where we do all of our packaging and blending, as far as like stock items and order fulfillment. Everything comes from there. We've been around a long time, since 1987. The facility that we're in now was built in 2017, and it's a little over 100,000 square foot with just a ton of capacity. I think the neat bullet point fact up here is just our steady source of labor is a real huge competitive advantage for us in this industry. Brookings is also the home to South Dakota State University, which is a production ag college. And so with that comes a lot of willing and able bodies that can help us. And so we have 40 to 50 part-time warehouse workers that are all college kids. And so that is a huge resource. Just to show you a bit of the capacity that we do some rough math and figure out that annually we're touching about 3.5 million acres, and that's all over the country and Canada now, and some international work as well. The thing that's really kind of growing our company over the last 5 years, I would say, is this network of processing facilities. And so in order to get good, clean seed into our warehouse at Brookings, we've got to have a touch point to clean that. And so we're working with farmers across the Midwest with our production team to get those acres set up through farmers. They're harvesting the seed. We're bringing into one of our 3 processing facilities, and then bringing in that clean seed back into Brookings to do our custom blends and stock blends. most of all of our natives
Mm-hmm.
that are coming into Brookings, a lot of them are growing up on a farm near Fertile, Minnesota. So we've got, acres of purple prairie clover and Seitelsgrama and blue stem, Indian grass. A lot of those native grasses are coming from there. And then, like you mentioned, we do have a location out in Spokane now, which was Clearwater Seed. And so that's going to be just a huge asset for us to be able to touch the West Coast and the Pacific Northwest a lot better, especially when it comes to shipping stuff out of there for freight cost wise too.
Does that Washington hub now also incorporate production that's, seed production and maybe some species that you could get before, but maybe smaller volume, but now you have you step up from, pallet quantities to rail car quantities of some seeds out of your West Coast or Great Basin specific?
Yes, that is exactly right. You nailed it. So
nice.
That company, Clearwater, had a really great team of growers and fields contracted of natives that, we would source stuff from them in the past, and now we're able to own that. And so that's a huge asset. And like I said, not only is it a great freight one, but it secures inventory and, really gets us at a better price point too, because now we're owning that inventory and we have more security of owning a larger volume of that inventory too.
Yeah. That's great.
And this map is really just an illustration of the network and where we're able to touch now because of that whole, basically that vertically integrated picture that you see there, from growing the seed to distributing the seed. So
super.
So in this space, we're able to do the natives for the orchards and stuff like that and the cover crops for it. Our lineup is really huge, and you touched on it about just the diversity within our company. And we think that's one thing that probably, allows us to separate ourselves in this space, is just having the right product for anybody all the time, all season long. We can work with a grower, a farmer, a co-op, a distributor, a seed company on all their seed needs when it comes to small seeds. And so we just continue to build that portfolio out and improve varieties, whether it's a variety of a perennial ryegrass or a cover crop radish or a big blue stem. Those are the ones that we're just, we're looking to improve all the time and make our portfolio stronger. This really just want to give you a glimpse of how we work with customers. And it really is probably unique where if you step out of the small seed industry and you look at other businesses, a lot of them will focus on just distributor model or end user retail model. Our go-to-market strategy has been working great because we have the ability to work across all those consumer buyer needs. So we wholesale seed company by the truckload or multi-truckloads to other seed companies. We'll sell a 1 pound bag of a pollinator mix to a gardener that wants to walk in the door. And, it's up and down that spectrum of how people buy. I've been at Millborn for about 15 years now, and Jason Trombach, one of my colleagues, is a conservation specialist, and he's been here I think 18 years now, and we've got other teammates that are at the same level. And so being in this business for that long, allows you to learn a lot. And so, that's pretty valuable, I think, when it comes to working with a company that you want the right recommendations when it comes to planting that seed, and you want somebody who's sourcing the correct seed and making sure that it's going to work in your area and give you those recommendations and guidelines along the way. So when it comes to the reclamation conservation side of our business, we've got a group of about a half a dozen folks on that team that they work from, getting the seed put into ground from production all the way into speccing seed with contractors and farmers and what they need. And so that industry knowledge is really crucial because that is a very, very niche market. They'll work with hand collectors for different flowers and sedges and wetland grasses, and they'll work with farmers that are growing hundreds of acres of big blue stem, And then on the forage and cover crop side, that too kind of comes into this space because that is more agronomically driven. And there too, we've got a team of a half a dozen folks that really just specialize in that. And so it's making sure that you understand what the planting conditions should be, what the fertility recommendations should be for a cover crop, whether or not you had herbicide residual, going through those agronomic things to make sure that what you plant is going to work on those fields.
Yeah. Yeah. You've said small seed twice as a category.
Yeah.
What's large seed? Tell us more about that category and what it is, but I guess also what it's not.
I would say small seed could also be termed a specialty seed market.
Okay.
And that would be anything other than like your corn, bean, wheat, seeds. So a lot of times,
so it's not the size, not like the size of the seed. It's the category. Yeah. It's not rail cars of soybean, corn, and wheat seed for production. Millions of acres of production ag. It's niche. It's the niche of. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like if you're if you're in the corn and soybean business, you would refer to our business as a small seed industry.
Sure, you're tiny. Yeah, you're not 8 versus ADM.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. That's a good question. I think when it comes to just execution, anytime you're planting the field, we're trying to hit a window, and whether it's rain coming or drought coming, time is of the essence. And so a lot of our business is very reactive. We would love to be in the business of setting pre-orders and getting seed out and sending, and then they got it when they're ready. But it's not the reality. So farmers call and they want the seed tomorrow. And so we have to be able to react really quickly. And because of the crew that we have all the time and the capabilities with a 50,000 pound blender and multiple, 1 and 2 ton blenders, we're able to get that seed out and crank it right away. And so that's just, we have to be that way if we're going to succeed. And then the other part, and I did touch on this, just that scope of the business that we're able to give recommendations for is extremely large. So I just want to give you a snapshot of some of the stuff that we do for what you could be planting. And then I think we'll get into detail a little bit more on that. But when it comes to what you could be planting, I'm going to break it down into 3 categories. And that's an annual mix, a introduced perennial mix, or a native perennial mix. And we'll talk about some of the pros and cons of each of these. These are example mixes. In fact, Nutrient Builder is one of our stock blends. We'll do that on a variety of fields for lots of different goals to be achieved. But most of this is being planted in late July through the month of September, where we've got a void in that field where maybe we had a crop of wheat come off, and now we've got to get a cover crop on that field, and we want to fix some nitrogen. We want the ground cover, creates weed suppression. That one's going to build biology, build fertility, and set that next year's crop up for success. The annual pollinator mix is a mix that we've done for full season cover crops, and we've done variations of all of these, depending on where you're located and what you really want to achieve. But the goal there is obviously to attract pollinators. So we need quick growing, fast flowering species that are going to do just that. But we also want some ground cover. We want some weed suppression. We want some soil building activities too. So we'll do mixes such as this. So the benefit of these, obviously, annuals grow really fast. They're going to cover the soil. They're going to prevent weeds from growing. We can have pollinator habitat. Obviously, if we're going to put like legumes in there, clovers, vetches, and stuff, we're going to fix some nitrogen. So this is a great way to set up your soil if you're going to go back into long-term perennial production. Or maybe we just want to be able to, maybe it's a short-term investment or something, or a short-term contract. We'll do something like this with an annual mix. The native mixes, these are going to be, in this scenario, especially whether we're doing, this is kind of similar to like what we'll do for solar projects, commercial reclamation projects too, as what these vineyards, orchards are going to be like, where we want shorter growing, hardy, long-lived species that aren't aggressive, right? They're not competitive. They're going to be low maintenance. So things like blue grama, buffalo grass, the side oats, little blue stuff. These are short grasses. Max height is going to probably be about 2 foot tall on a blend like this. And we can just plant it and forget it once it's established. Now, when we plant it, it is going to be longer. It's going to take a longer time to get established. It usually takes year 2 before you're really satisfied with the stand of a native mix like this. But once it's there, these are really resilient species that obviously, you get the bullet point that says as nature intended. That's their native species, and that's what Mother Nature had on the native prairie before soils were disturbed. So they remember.
Right. Are any of these do they shut down in the summer? Like I think in the context out here in the vineyards and orchards, and maybe it's not these, but maybe it's other grasses in the portfolio. I think about a lot of the growers. They're shy. They're shying away from active vegetation in the orchard or the vineyard in the season that they're trying to conserve water, they're trying to irrigate, they're working the vineyard, they're on their feet, or they're driving through, and they just don't want they want their cover crop to go away. And so then we've got the dichotomy of, okay, the cover crop goes away, but are the roots still in the ground? And so are any of these in that category, or is it a different set of perennials that you would steer towards?
Yeah, some of these would. A lot of these are actually more warm season grasses. Like this is a blend of warm and cool season native grasses. And so you're going to see a flush in the spring of prairie June grass, Idaho fescue. Then as it warms up, the warm seasons kick into gear, turn on, break dormancy, and they're going to grow on through the heat of a summer. And then everything's going to kind of go to bed and go dormant there after that through the fall. So once they go reproductive, put on a seed, obviously they're done growing. They've done their job, lived their life cycle, and they'll go dormant. But through most of the season, a blend like this would be growing.
Okay. You mentioned that they're all in fairly short stature. I think that is one of the components that the growers that we're working with, where they're switching from the soil builder mix, that fast vegetation, heavy dense vegetation that you can get to like 4 or 5 feet deep sometimes in these orchards and vineyards, that they're like, man, that's a lot of biomass. It's a lot of work to deal with all that biomass, especially when the biomass is peaking, in March and April, as they're trying to get into the orchard, into the vineyard. And so when we talk to them about like, what would you like to see? And they're like, I want the roots, right? But I don't want all that biomass. Yeah. And so when you call out that some of these grasses that people can select are going to be shorter and less vegetation intense, I think that's a selling point right at the top of the list.
Yeah, as you're working through the orchard, you don't want a jungle of plants to work through and compete against too, nor do you want those plants to be competitive against the orchard, itself. So you do need something that's really minimal in terms of its inputs with water and fertility. And once these are established, they are that. They don't require much of anything. So
the other interesting thing that I hadn't really thought of intuitively, but it's become apparent is in some of those mixes that have really high tall vegetation that's dense. They talk about like the humidity layer, is from 0 to 4 feet, as opposed to it being from 0 to like 18 inches. And so there's a temperature differential, and there's also a humidity differential with the heavy biomass annual covers. And so another aspect besides just the practical aspect of getting into the vineyard or orchard to work, but there's a temperature and a moisture component of that they're seeking with a lower forage basically in their cover system.
Sure. I've never thought of that, but that makes sense. So if let's say you're growing like so big biomass species, whether it's like a millet or a sedan grass, sorghum, those ones I could see doing that. If you do get that these huge forage type plants and your humidity level starts to raise, what issues does that cause?
In an orchard or a vineyard, it's gonna affect fungal infection potential for the tree or the vine, and definitely in almost every context out here in those production systems, by the time they've got fruit on, they've mowed that vegetation down. Like they need it to be out of the way, and so that's where we steer towards cool season perennials, cool season annuals. That are just gonna, they're gonna take a nap. Temperature, growing degree days hit a threshold, they're gonna take a nap, or or moisture conditions are such that they're not getting actively watered. They're gonna go dormant. And so that's generally what they're seeking.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, we'll fight the same thing. So right now, our corn crop is just growing like crazy. I mean, we went from knee-high corn to head-high corn in the last week, and the humidity levels have just soared over the last days.
Yeah.
But within soybeans, when we get too dense of a canopy, then we fight white mold as a common fungal disease, and so people will actually spread out the rows, try to get more air movement through there, and so same concept, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so those are natives.
Those are natives. If we move on to like more of the introduced perennial mixes, now this is kind of what you were referring to. It's cool season grasses. The fescues are going to be very common in what we do here, and sometimes people will want a little bit of clover in there. We'll throw in a little white Dutch clover or red clover, something like that. But sheep chewing hard fescues, those are very common here. They will. They're coming on quick in the spring. They'll use a little bit more fertility than what a native species would, but they establish extremely quick. They're gonna get you quick ground cover within that first year of establishment. So it's kind of a plant it and check off that box that first year of establishment. And when we compare them to a native mix, they actually are usually more economical on a per basis too. We're planting more pounds of them. But your per pound cost is lower, and so overall that project's a little bit cheaper too.
Okay, great. How do you recommend people to manage these perennials, especially if they're leaning towards perennial grasses as the dominant cover for their system? If it's perennial, the roots are in the ground. You want to keep those roots alive and intact, so we're going away from tillage. Obviously, we're not spraying it now. We're not using a broad spectrum herbicide to terminate each year, like sometimes they are if they've got annual cover. And so, is it as simple as just switching over to a mower as your method of management?
Yeah, that is the most popular way. I think that's how most people are managing them. These aren't going to be. I mean, the fescue grasses don't get over 1.5 feet tall, so they are fairly short. But what they start to do is they start to just kind of roll over itself and lay over, and so that mat starts to kind of build up, and so it's something that we would mow probably a few times a year just to kind of open that up and keep it down. And there too, like it's a little easier to work through when it's not quite as tall and thick a dense of a cover. So it's gonna make it a little bit easier to work through. Yeah,
nice. How do you when somebody says native versus introduced? I think sometimes people think about native as like, oh, this is endemic to my backyard. It's native. It was in my backyard 300 years ago. Other people say native it's endemic to the region. You know, it's natural. It's from Utah. I brought it to California in the same climate. It's native. Other people say, well, it's anywhere in North America is native. Like, where do you guys draw the line on this is native versus introduced?
So I think, I mean, there is,
it's a spectrum.
Well, yeah, it is, but like, I think maybe kind of a way to simplify it, like these grasses that were here before anybody brought anything else over from Europe, like your brooms, your fescues, your ryegrasses, your bluegrasses, those grasses that were bred and produced and altered, those are more introduced grasses. The species that once grew in the United States are native. From there, we have different ecotypes, I would say. Whereas like Cytoxgrama is a good example, where we'll have varieties that are more suited for the northern climate, and we'll have varieties of Cytoxgrama that are more suited for, Texas and the southern climate. And that can be said with a lot of different species, especially with the grasses. So you do have to make sure that the species you're selecting for is the variety that's suitable for your climate. So we'll do a lot of Pierre and Butte Cytotes in the north, and El Reno Cytotes in the south. So knowing those varieties and how they should be placed and where they should go is kind of important here too, because the stuff that's going to work better in California isn't going to work as good in South Dakota or Minnesota either.
Right. Yeah, I guess that brings up we haven't here at the co-op and for this grant program, we haven't specified, a 5 species mix. Yeah. Simply because I have this expectation that if we did say, here's the 5 species mix for orchards, almost everybody we talk to would want to take one out or add something in. And I realize we can say, it's not an option. This is the mix. This is you get a great price. This is the mix. It's available today. And so there's trade-offs there, but every grower has their own context. And so we've been using the idea of like, what are your guardrails and what are your goals? Like, what are you trying to avoid? Oh, I don't want something that's going to be 3 feet tall. I do want, I do want something that's going to, flower in March, April, whatever. Like they've got goals and guardrails. So when we bring somebody to you that has an orchard in California, Oregon, or Washington, they have to switch to no-till. They have to switch, they're switching to something that's going to either reseed itself and or be perennial for a permanent cover setup. What are the questions that you ask them? Like, what are the first three or four things that you're going to ask them about to understand what to take them, how to guide them into that seed mix?
Yeah. Yep. So obviously knowing their region, their soil types is crucial from the start to make sure that we have the correct species or the varieties of those species available for them. And those are the ones that we're using. And when we go through this is sort of similar to how we would do when we create a customized mix, or we get a spec sheet for an NRCS plan for like a CRP mix. We do a lot of those across all the states. And so we'll actually create that blend sheet knowing where that region is. And so this would be the same. We would create a blend sheet knowing that this mix is going into Washington State. And so from there, we're only choosing those varieties of those species that are suitable for that region. And so just selecting within our in-house, basically it is just a blend spreadsheet. It's going to pull the correct varieties from that area. So that's the first thing that we would start with. And then you mentioned the word context, right? Like, what is your context on your farm, your field? What do you really want to achieve from it? And then it kind of breaks down to those 3 options with an annual mix, whether it is a pollinator or a soil building type of a blend, and how you're going to utilize it, what you really want to achieve from that annual mix. We'd create, a blend that's suitable for that. And that's where Team of cover crop specialists comes in and knows what each species should achieve, whether it's a legume to fix nitrogen or a radish to open up the ground or a ryegrass to get good quick cover. We know the correct ratios of those species that should be in the blend so that one's not over competitive against the other, choking something down, or you have a solid stand of just radishes now. And then, and then the other options of an introduced or a native perennial mix, and formulating the blend there too, depending on really what they want long-term from that mix. So those would be the first steps within the process. And then it would go on to talk about, really the protocol to get that stand established correctly with planting conditions and fertility levels in your soil. And if you're doing some sort of herbicide management, what did you spray? And making sure it was compatible with what you want to plant.
Yeah. What are there some annuals that do well as pollinators as well that will reseed? If somebody's got a kind of a perennial dominant cover plan, maybe it's grass dominant, but they want some wildflowers in there to become pollinator habitat, part of their insect, attracting those beneficial insects. But they don't want to have to reseed every year. Are there a handful of options for annuals that can do that and then reseed themselves and basically become part of that plan?
Yeah, a lot of the annual clovers are great reseeders. And it does seem like the smaller seed size of that plant, the better reseeder it is, because that seed's just going to drop, sit on the soil. It's going to take some moisture to get it going and set a germ shallow, versus like a pea or a bean, that's a large seed and it's hard to get good soil to seed contact as it just volunteers. So clovers are great at it. Red clover is probably one of the best self-seeders. And it's it's kind of a short-lived or biannual type of a plant. And so that one, it's naturally wants to make seed pretty quick, and that seed is really little, and it's going to, it's going to set a root really easily on top of the surface and get going and establish that way. Seems like the shorter lived the species, the better reseeder it is too, because that germination period is short. And so it's just going to, you minimize the variables of the time for that seed to get a good germ and set a root and grow. So
it's almost like, the shorter lived it is, the better it has to be at reproduction through seed.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yep.
Which gets into, it germinates fast. It goes vegetated fast, and then it flowers and reseeds fast. The opposite of the perennials, which I think kind of brings me to the expectations management perspective. If somebody's been doing a legume and brassica heavy annual soil builder mix with a lot of above ground vegetation, and then they move to a perennial system, maybe it's grass dominant, it's going to look different, right? It's going to look different, especially in that first year. What's some of the pre-seeding prep that is going to help those perennials succeed? And then what is that first year or two going to look like in terms of what success is visually, from an expectations management perspective?
Yeah, that we always try to emphasize to take your time and start things right when you're doing a long-term perennial seeding. And so we want to make sure the ground conditions are about as prime as you can get. So we want that field leveled up, obviously, because we're going to be traveling over it a lot. And we want it clod-free. We want it weed-free. So whether that takes, that initial cultivation, leveling, rolling, cultipacking, whatever it is to get that seed bed firmed up and primed to plant. That's the tools we're going to use to get there. Then, like most of the time we would recommend drilling the seed, and we want to drill really shallow. I mentioned firm seed bed is crucial. It's firm before and it's firm after. And so when we place that seed in the soil a 1/4 inch deep, it's really shallow, but then we want to make sure that our closing wheels, our packing wheels, or the cultipacker is doing a great job of just pressing that seed against the soil. It's just going to give that seed more insurance for soil to seed contact to hold and wick moisture for a longer period of time. So that just setting up that field correctly from the start is crucial then to get that stay on good. And the other part of it is like, if we're starting from scratch, making sure that we have as little weed competition as possible, especially on the native grass side, because well, if we're doing native grasses and flowers or forbs, then we really don't have any way of mass spraying weeds. We're just going to have to rogue it or spot spray. So we want to start clean. And then those grasses, because they have, a long establishment window, they're not, their vigor is not great. And so they're not competitive against weeds. And so we just want to minimize that as much as possible.
Does, in that first season, say we're 8 weeks in, it's germinated, you got those perennials are coming up, but also there's moisture and the temps right, and the weed pressure, the resident vegetation that it can just take off is taking off.
Mm-hmm.
Is a way to level the playing field there. Is it just to mow, like get everything knocked down? If your perennial grasses are at 3 inches and your weeds are popping up 6-7 inches up, like bring the mower in and mow down to 3.
Correct. Exactly right. Okay. We'll always recommend doing a clipping or 2 in that year of establishment, and you're just going to open up that canopy. And actually, I do think that for the grasses that you planted, I think it's good for those to be clipped. It seems like it promotes more tillering as you clip off the tops of them. And so if you've got a bunch type grass like a side oats or a little blue stem, clipping that is going to allow that grass to just spread out and form more of a solid stand or sod over time too. So just pushes a little bit.
It feels contradictory for us sometimes, because a lot of the conversations we're having with growers is, hey, you're going to be able to get out of tilling, you're going to be able to get out of spraying, you're going to be able to, you're doing this to get away from these these 3 things that cost money, cost time, have impacts to your landscape. But before we start, we want you to till, we want you to spray, we want you to do these things. But I think it just goes into like that setting up for success, and then being able to have it established and not have to come back in the next year with as many inputs over the following year. So it's planning and getting the framework in place to have a successful establishment.
Yeah. And a way that we've kind of, let's say you're starting off at step 1, and we want quick ground cover. We want to build that soil. Maybe it's just kind of been abused, beat up ground. We come in with kind of a soil builder / pollinator type of a mix as a cover crop. Well, in order to plant that, we've done all the seed bed prep correctly. Whereas, we've got that annual pollinator or annual cover crop mix established, and those things die off as annuals. Now we could come in there with a no-till drill that next year, and we could plant our perennials. And so we've probably done a good enough job of setting the stage and now prepping the soil and building the biology for the soil to have a better, quicker stand establishment of a perennial.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting about the orchard, a lot of the orchards out here, so we've got over 1 million acres of almond orchard, and then also a lot of walnut orchards, and those are they're harvested off the ground. And of course they were probably laser leveled when they were put in. But because they're harvested off the ground, especially in the almonds, they'll, shake the trees, the almonds drop, and then they windrow them down the middle of the aisle. And then when they harvest them, they come through and they pick them up, and it sifts out, leaf matter and, dirt and whatnot, debris. And so then they're left with this little windrow of dirt and organic matter. And then they'll come through and float that out. And so as long as they're not, once the perennial grasses are in, as long as they're not floating by scraping, but they're just floating it and just pushing that little windrow out, that activity each year kind of maintains a pretty level, flat surface to plant into, to seed into. And so that if the almond orchard has been established for a while, it's not going to be too lumpy. It's going to be, you know, when you get to October, it's going to have a fairly smooth surface to plant into. But the other thing is, you said 1/4 of an inch. This is one of those situations where more is not better. Like when you say 1/4, you really mean 1/8, not a half, right?
Yeah, no, it's pretty true. Like, if you get done seeding and you seed some soil, or you seed some, if you get done planting and you see seed on top of the soil, you probably planted it right.
Yeah.
If you don't see any seed, a lot of them might be too deep.
Right. Yeah. And that difference, with a 10 or 11 foot wide, orchard cedar, on hundreds of acres, like 1/4 inch versus 1/8 versus a half, that's a fairly small adjustment to make. And so I think that's important, important to have an eye on that, and check your cedar, once you get rolling for a little bit, get out, stop the tractor, check your calibration, make sure it hasn't shifted. Because it's hard to, there's no go backs. Like it's hard to, you can't take that back and redo it unless you buy another tote of seed and pay for all that diesel and all that time again.
Yeah. And I think that, it comes back to that seedbed prep. And as long as it's leveled up, firmed up, then your drill should do a great job of planting it where you set that drill. But the more variation you have in the mellowness of the topsoil, your drill is probably going to do a little bit more floating, and you're going to have various seed depths. So, and seed depth, it comes down to like emergence time too. And when everything is planted the same, things emerge the same too. And we want that uniform growth coming up together too.
Right. I'm optimistic about this setup because we already know that, the vineyard and orchard owners, they're making an investment that has a decades-long commitment. They have a decades-long view of how long will this orchard be producing? How long will this vineyard be producing? And so if they can see, and they're adopting the idea that this perennial mix, or this, if they've selected a single species to lean into, this perennial cover planting will last years, maybe decades, with less management needed, less purchasing needed over time than what they've been doing. That first year of establishment is worth the investment. It's worth slowing down, and it's the slow is smooth and smooth is fast kind of philosophy of get it done right, and then enjoy the benefits of that.
And I think that's harder and harder for us, just as we are a society of quick responses and faster results all the time. And so it's a little bit more of a patience tester with these perennials, of getting it in and getting it right for the long-term success of the entire vineyard or orchard, to make sure it's done right.
Yeah, we are fully expecting that we're going to have customers, members of the co-op, new members of the co-op, and just see customers or growers that want to use our AMP grant. We're fully expecting that we will have people that have been hearing about what we're doing and our grant for the last year, showing, giving us a call on October 15th saying, okay, I'm ready for seed next week. And so, with that, the reason we're doing this series with you in July is because we have this AMP grant, and we actually do, some growers don't want to deal with the USDA, NRC, they're not, the last thing they want to do is more paperwork, right? And so we've got this AMP grant. It's the USDA Advancing Markets for Producers. The market that we're trying to help create or introduce people to is actually the carbon credit market, because if you move into a perennial system of cover with no till, you're actually driving more carbon into your soil. And whether you care about carbon credits or not, that's inherently good because your water holding capacity increases and your soil microbiome improves. And so we've got this AMP grant, literally about $3.5 million worth of seed that we can help fund. And our growers through the grant can get their first 10 acres of planted seed fully paid for. They have to pay for sales tax and shipping, but the seed itself, and that's up to about $3,700 worth of seed. So you could really get a nice mix. Like you could get a native perennial or one of those introduced perennials that's a really top quality. You can get the quantity of seed needed to get a good establishment paid for on that. But we're doing the paperwork. Like we're walking that paperwork through once we've got a grower's FSA docs. And we know that's going to take 2 to 4 weeks, with some back and forth with the grower, get it submitted. And so right now is prime time for anybody, any vineyard or orchard producer in Washington, Oregon, California, even Arizona, to say, hey, I want to do this grant. Like start today, because with that planning, we don't have to come to you with we need a pallet of this next week. We don't have to. Yeah. We can get things planned out and get the logistics planned out. And with that grant, we can get things processed right now so that seed shows up really the week that they need it. And it's not we're not reactive throughout the whole chain of events. So the grant's a phenomenal opportunity, not just the 10 acres for free. If they're going bigger than that, we can support through the grant another $100 per acre for the next 100 acres. Okay. So like there's a lot of budget here for a grower to get a lot of coverage, and it's planted seed. And so if they're only doing the middles, that 110 acres that we can help support through the grant might actually be like a 200-acre orchard. Wow. If they're just doing the middles, and they're not doing full coverage. So we've got a tremendous resource here. That is. And what we're learning from you as a supplier helps guide people in what they would want to select and also what their expectations are going to be. But we've got to get them going now. We got to get them going in the next month or so the paperwork flows and then the seed arrives. Yep. Yeah. No, that is an absolute awesome opportunity. I think, and that kind of leads in just the last two snips of these slides here is just trying to keep things as simple as possible. Nobody wants to make this process harder than it should be. Right. So we do, like I mentioned, we've got standard mix items, but more than likely all of these are going to be, a la carte items where people want to put together their own mix for their own fields. And that's what we do best. But this last slide here is just a snip of what we've done for another partnership that we've had through a business called Eggspire. And so for them, we created an online portal with, mix options that a producer can log into. And so through OBC2, we can create the exact same format. If you get a member, we could just log in through here and build up your options and show them and just work through the process there too. So just an opportunity there that I wanted to highlight too. So that'll be something to fine tune. Are you storing? What's the inventory like on that in the Washington location? Is it everything, or do you do truckloads out to there to be able to ship everything from there? I'm just thinking from a shipping and logistics perspective, that Washington node is going to be really important for saving some money and time. Yep, it really will be. They have nearly as diverse of an inventory as what we have in Brookings, and so things that will go into these fields would all be there at the Spokane location there at Clearwater. And so, a lot of that can just funnel through there.
and they're completely capable of fulfilling that
Great.
need with those orders too. So, yep.
That's great. Do you see, just this is kind of an idle curiosity of my own, do you see some of those more Midwest centric, you said like what, side oats, grama?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you see those succeeding out in the West, or do they need do they need the humidity and the Midwest humidity and whatnot, or do they succeed out here in the right conditions?
Yeah, they can. They do like heat.
Okay.
And they are, I think what we'll see other species thrive more than what they will. And so typically you won't see them as dominant in a native planting or in a prairie, because other plants would like the conditions and prefer those growing conditions more than what they do. So
got it. I mean, so you're fighting against nature at that point. It's not, you can, but it's not ideal.
Yeah. Especially like in the Pacific Northwest there, like wheatgrasses do great in native blends. And so you'll see those thrive, and they're probably a little bit more aggressive at the start of a season. And when they get established before like a blue grama, side oats grama, they're gonna take the resources there that were there and choke out, crowd out those other ones.
Got it. Exciting. Well, this is great. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I like that you got the portal there. We're gonna do some outreach in Washington specifically, because I think that the location that you've got there is going to be a great resource. And I know there's a lot of orchards, not as many nuts, but a lot of fruit orchards in Washington and Oregon that could benefit from this grant as well. We've got a hazelnut orchard that's in our carbon program. That's the other thing that I didn't mention. I mentioned that the impetus of helping growers get into perennial cover for their orchard or vineyard. But we've got this carbon program too. There's some well-known carbon programs in the U.S. Some of them are very Midwest, corn, wheat, soy system focused. Others are more ranching, rangeland focused.
Yep.
Our program is focused on vineyards and orchards because they've got all this soil between their permanent crop. They've got this floor of soil that is available to be really activated and made and improved for better water infiltration, better soil microbiology, but also carbon sequestration.
Sure.
And so we've got some folks. We've got a hazelnut grower up in Oregon that's in the carbon program, and we're looking to enroll folks in that and support their access to the carbon program by getting them this seed, getting them this support on the seed. So I'm looking forward to working with you guys and introducing some growers to you, and then hopefully moving some pallets or even some truckloads of seed out to the West Coast and into California.
Yeah, no, we would love to, and that's kind of over the last few years, whether it be an AMP grant or other people that have enrolled in carbon programs that just need to plant a cover crop. Yep. We've had experience of working through those so that we have systems and processes in place for tracking those too. So it's our familiarity with that allows us to probably be able to willingly jump into this sort of your AMP grant or your carbon program and know that we can take it on and tackle it and execute with excellence.
Yeah.
So no, we're excited about it too, and excited to give guidance to your growers along the way wherever we can help for that long-term success like we've talked about.
Yeah, we'll send you some growers with their wish lists. Like I said, they'll have their guardrails and their goals, and then look for some creativity and some solutioning to see what comes out of the hat on your end as what they should do, and then get some things dialed in. So again, I've got Justin here from Millborn Seed, and thank you for your time today, and appreciate what you guys bring to really the industry, not just ag, but like you said, conservation work, reclamation work, food plots, and everything in between all over North America. So thanks for being here today and talk about growing cover with Millborn Seed.
Appreciate
All right.
the time.
Thanks, Justin.
All right. See ya.
Cool. All right. I'm going to go and wrap it up. All right, sir. We will have a blog summary out next week, and we'll make sure to tag you guys on it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
You did a really good job of just making this a conversation and flow and covering things we needed to. So
right on. All right. We'll see you later. Say hello to the team. Thank you.
All right, we'll do. Yeah, bye.
All right, bye.